Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. In the midst of one of the most contentious presidential elections in memory, Capitol Hill was ground zero this week. The FBI Director James Comey was grilled by Congress over his recommendation to bring no charges against former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. At the same time, on Thursday, the presumptive GOP nominee Donald Trump met with House and Senate members in an effort to unify his party. Navigating it all is Speaker Paul Ryan. Last year, the Wisconsin Congressman reluctantly replaced John Boehner as leader of the House. I spoke with Ryan earlier today at the Capitol. In this exclusive interview, he reacts to the Trump meeting, explores where he and Trump disagree or agree on policy, and for the first time, reveals a new piece of conscience protection legislation that he plans to unveil next week. Here's my interview with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. Mr. Speaker, thanks for the time. I know Donald Trump is trying to unify this party. I know this has long been on your agenda. He was here today. He met with House members. He met with senators. I was told the House reception was icy, but he did well, that it was a cool reception. Your thoughts on whether you can work with him here in Congress, given what you've seen? I mean, he was debating with some members today.
Well, first of all, good to see you, Ray.
Great to see you.
Welcome to the Capitol.
Thank you.
Second of all, I think you're maybe confusing the Senate reception with the House reception. My understanding, and I wasn't at the Senate meeting, was that that was a fairly cool one. The House was pretty good.
Really?
Yeah. I think the House was a good reception. He provided remarks and then spent a good half hour, 45 minutes just taking suggestions, answering questions with our members of the House of Representatives, the House Republican Caucus.
What were the big concerns?
Just various concerns. It's a private meeting, so I don't kind of go into the nitty-pick of the meeting, but all I would say is I thought we had a very good meeting, a very good exchange, and it was good for him to hear from members what their concerns and their priorities are so that we can better understand each other going forward to have a more unified party, which is the goal here. That's the objective, have a unified party so we're at full strength in the fall so that we can win this election, because the last thing we want to see is another liberal progressive in the White House for another 4 years.
And are you confident that that unity is in the offing? Given the voices you still hear, I mean, he was arguing with senators. There's still tensions, even with you, on certain issues of major importance.
Look, I think the point is we have so much more common ground than not. And that's important to recognize. We have put out a very bold agenda here in the House Republican Conference. We discussed that agenda at great length with him today, as I have in the past. And I think what we have is someone who is very comfortable with this agenda as our presumptive nominee. So I do think he's excited and very supportive of where we're going, the principles we're using, and the kinds of solutions that we're offering. And that's the kind of conversation we had today. So we had a pretty good, productive conversation in the House. Can't speak for the Senate, but those are the issues that we brought up with him.
Okay. I want to talk to you a moment about something the presumptive candidate, Donald Trump, said yesterday. He suggested that there might be bribery at play in the Bill Clinton-Loretta Lynch conversation, and that Hillary Clinton might have offered Loretta Lynch something for her silence on this issue, or walking away from the email server. Do you agree with that assessment?
I just can't speak to that. I just can't speak to that. I didn't even hear what he said in context. So the point is, I thought it was highly irregular, highly inappropriate that the Attorney General met with the spouse of someone who was under an active investigation.
But you wouldn't go so far as to
she herself
suggest
said as much. I don't even know what he said, so I really don't want to comment on it.
In the speech last night in Cincinnati, Mr. Trump was talking about everything from, he was prosecuting Hillary Clinton on one hand, and then he revived a series of conflicts we've heard in the last few weeks about everything from Stars of David to, delegates walking away in Denver. If you were advising him, and I imagine you are at this point, you would tell him what about those speeches? Is it wise to keep relitigating these?
I didn't see, I'm pretty busy in this day job, so
I know, I noticed.
Yes, but I would just say let's focus on the fall. Let's focus on your juxtaposition with Hillary Clinton, your upcoming opponent, and let's focus on giving the country a very clear alternative. That's what we're focusing on. I didn't see his speech. I heard about what you just described, but the focus is, what do we offer the people? Do we give the people of this country a better way, a better path, And do we show the contrast with the choice they have between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? That's why I think where the focus ought to be. He is a unique candidate. He is a one-of-a-kind person, and it's going to be very interesting in that respect. But I think that's one of the reasons why people find themselves appealed to him.
No, well, look, he cuts through. He cuts through, and he speaks in a way
he's appealing
that the
to people because he cuts through, because he's non-traditional, because he's different. So I think he believes that uniqueness, his different style of campaigning, is refreshing to so many, and so that's probably why he continues to do that. He's a very smart man, so I don't think this is unintended. But I think it's important that in addition to having a unique campaign style, that we offer the country a very clear and compelling choice. Here are our principles. Here's what we do when we apply them to the problems of the day, and here's how we're going to improve people's lives. And here's how it's so different than what Hillary Clinton is offering.
Let's talk about some specific issues that you have been confronting, you've been offering. Your conference has over the last few months and weeks, rolling out a series of proposals. One is immigration, which is something that is in the forefront of the national debate. You supported a pathway to legal status for the undocumented. You've done that for years. Donald Trump has advocated a very different approach, everything from deportation to building a wall. Given what you see now from the population, do the times justify his approach, and where do you meet him? How can you meet him?
Well, like I said, we don't agree on everything, but on more things than not, we agree. I don't agree with this idea of mass deportations. Number one, I don't think it will work. Number two, I just don't know how you would do it if you even tried. But number three, I think there are better ways of fixing this problem. And I really do believe that in a deliberative process, getting out of this hyper-political moment we are in, which is the kind of moment we are in, cool heads can prevail and we can figure out how to fix what we all agree is a broken immigration system. And where we clearly agree is that the border needs to be secured. It's not secured. We need to secure the border. That's part of our national security strategy. So I really think, Ray, that right now we're in this hyper-political environment. You're not going to have calm and reasoned debate about these things. So after this election, I think we can have a calm and reasoned debate about how to fix this broken immigration system. I've been prolific in my writing and my advocacy for how I think we fix this system. And he and I don't agree on some of these things. On securing the border, we totally agree on that. I think all Republicans do.
But this has been so central to his campaign. It's been on the forefront. People clearly, if they're supporting Donald Trump, it's one of the major reasons they are supporting him. Do you take any message from that, and might you modulate your position given where the voters seem to be?
Sure. Well, I think what I do agree with, and I think what people are really upset about, is the rule of law is just being cast aside. It's not being applied. And so they feel like we're losing control of our own country because we can't even control our own border. Look, we're about to pass opioid legislation because of this heroin epidemic that is just raging through America, Wisconsin included. That's part of the porous border. That's one of the problems we have with our border. ISIS. Look at the terrorist attacks. We know we have terrorists that are trying to come into this country. So people are legitimately really worried about that. That's something that we are very concerned about. We need to fix. It's part of our agenda. And so there's an area right there where we all agree on. And so that's something that we have common ground on. That's something that I think is one of the reasons why people are so upset and why they're supporting Donald Trump. On that, we agree.
Let's talk about this email scandal that is engulfing the Capitol, particularly today. FBI Director Comey appeared before the House Oversight Committee. He claims that Hillary Clinton did not lie while under oath, but it is clear that she certainly lied in her public statements. Right. What are you seeking in this regard?
So,
do you want the transcripts?
Lying under oath means you didn't commit perjury.
Right.
But lying to the public, which she has clearly demonstrated on a number of occasions she did, I think it's just another piece of the story that she seems to hold herself above the laws, above the rules, that she doesn't play by the rules that everybody else plays by. And by the way, we're hoping for a commander-in-chief, and we want a commander-in-chief that's going to be straight and level with people. And so I think this is one big example of where she has not been straight with people.
And what is the legislative redress? What can Congress do in this regard?
This is a prosecutorial decision, so Congress is not a prosecutorial branch of government, so there's nothing we can do with respect to prosecution. What we can do in the hearing that we had today was designed to get to the answers that were to the questions that were unanswered. James Comey put out a laundry list of evidence, made a call that he wasn't going to prosecute, but he, in doing so, left a whole bunch of unanswered questions. He didn't take questions from the press after his statement. So I think it was just natural that Congress, which does oversight of the executive branch, followed up with a hearing like this.
Now, you have asked the Director of National Intelligence to deny Hillary Clinton privileged classified information because of what you see as mishandling of classified information in the past. Is that appropriate, given the fact? But Speaker, she could end up being president of the United States.
And then when she's president, she gets to decide such things. But let me explain why. The FBI director said, here's all this evidence of all this reckless mishandling of classified information. I'm not going to prosecute. But that doesn't mean that there should be administrative consequences. Because under these kinds of situations, there are typically administrative consequences denying access to classified information to people who engage in such reckless behavior. So he just said, she engaged in reckless behavior. I'm not going to prosecute, but maybe something should be done on the administrative front. When I heard that, I said, aha. Having been on the ticket, having gotten those deeply classified briefings after the convention, which I know she's about to get, that told me she should be denied that classified information.
I want to talk about guns for a moment. We've seen a lot of debate here at the Capitol. What should be done? How should you roll it back? You had a bill as part of an anti-terrorism law that you pulled off the floor, a section of it, because you couldn't get agreement even in the Republican caucus. The Democrats are threatening another sit-in.
Yeah.
If that happens, you will do what?
We haven't pulled the bill from the floor. We put legislation up there to get comment, and we're now getting feedback and comment from our members about how to get this right. What we don't want to do is infringe upon law-abiding citizens' rights. We also don't want to undermine ongoing terrorist investigations, and we want to make sure that the FBI codifies their policy of making sure that a person they believe is a terrorist doesn't get a gun.
Right.
So I just said three things that you've got to get right. So we put legislation out there to get comments, and now we're still getting a lot of feedback and comments from various members of Congress. So we're going to bring this to the floor when we're ready to bring this to the floor. We want to get it right. We don't want to mess with people's constitutional rights. We don't want to hurt terrorism investigations. We want to make sure that a person that we have probable cause that we really believe is a terrorist doesn't get a gun. So that's what we're trying to get right.
The Democrats are threatening another sit-in.
They do that a lot these days.
Because they want you to bring up a vote on their gun legislation. You said once before, when they did this a few weeks ago, you would not tolerate this. What will you do if they stage another sit-in?
We are in the midst of figuring out exactly what kind of sanctions, what kind of processes should be included here. Here's what bothers me about these kinds of tactics. They take the oldest democracy in the world, in the United States House of Representatives, and they turn it upside down, violating the rule of law. If we can't have civil discourse and debate about our nation's laws here in Congress, where can we? We should not be turning the House chamber into a college campus sit-in. We should be doing the people's business, because when we do this, then we can't even have civilized debate. I think people in this country want Republicans and Democrats talking with each other, working with each other. We're working on this legislation. We want to get it right. And I think publicity stunts, which they then use for fundraising, is really not what we should be doing here in Congress.
Let's talk about these two shootings in Baton Rouge, in Minneapolis. The president came out today in a statement. He said these are not isolated incidents. They speak to something deeper, perhaps racially motivated. Do you agree with that diagnosis?
Well, first of all, I haven't even seen the videos. I just heard of these things. I've been pretty busy today. And I saw just a clip over here a minute ago about the one in Minneapolis, which was just troubling and gruesome. The question is, we don't know the answers to these. This just happened. So before we rush to judgment, why don't we settle down and get the facts before rendering a judgment?
I want to talk for a moment about a piece of legislation that has been here for a little bit. It's coming forth, I'm told. The Conscience Protection Act. What is this, and why is it necessary now?
This is something that I feel very passionate about. This is something that I'm really worried about, which is the government is using its power to deny people their First Amendment conscience rights. And so next Wednesday, we're bringing legislation to the floor offered by Diane Black, the Conscience Protection Act, to give private citizens like healthcare workers the ability to get private action to protect their conscience rights. We can't have the government forcing someone to engage in an activity like a nurse performing an abortion or a doctor performing an abortion, that it violates their conscience, their beliefs. And right now, the federal government in the state of California is not protecting their conscience rights. They're going against, we believe, the current law we have on the books. And so we need new protections to make sure that every citizen's conscience rights, their First Amendment rights, are protected. This is something we feel very strong about. I really worry that our conscience and our religious freedom is under attack in America by our government. That is why we're bringing this very much needed legislation to the floor next week.
And this would particularly apply to healthcare workers and health institutions.
Well, beyond that, but in this case, yes. So what happened is in California, you have a situation where the federal government is not defending a person's conscience rights. We have laws that say they're supposed to do that. And now in California, healthcare workers are going to be forced to do things, do procedures that violate their conscience.
Yeah.
And that means we are violating their First Amendment rights, and we want to give them the ability to defend those rights in court.
This is the first time you're announcing that you're bringing it up this week to a vote, next week to a vote.
We're bringing it to the floor on Wednesday.
Why now?
Well, why now? Because we think there's a need because of what happened in California. Because the Department of Health and Human Services changed the typical protocol for how we defend conscience rights to not even defending the law. And so we think this is just one more chapter, a more recent chapter, of this federal government going after our conscience rights, going after religious freedom. Little Sisters of the Poor, conscience workers, healthcare workers in California, these are all pieces of the same puzzle.
Two quick questions from viewers. These are rapid fire, but I had to open this up to the viewers. So they said, what do you say to a person who, like me, wants to vote GOP for the first time in my life, but I have concerns about Trump? Convince me to vote for him and for you.
Hillary Clinton. Supreme Court. You want rapid fire? I'll give you rapid
There's
fire.
rapid fire, okay.
Supreme Court.
I'll take it. How does your faith help you day to day navigate the challenges you encounter here?
Couldn't do it without my faith. I couldn't do it today. I start the day with serenity prayer. I end it with the daily prayer. And you know, the way I look at this is, if you don't keep God in your heart, if you don't keep your faith, if you don't think about the social magisterium, if you don't think about the Catholic social teaching, you're really not practicing your faith. So to me, it's really something that's important in my day-to-day interactions with my family, with my staff, with myself, with my colleagues. And so how do you take and apply these principles to prudential judgment in how you conduct everything you do, whether it's the job you have or the family you're trying to raise or the relationships you're trying to maintain?
Mr. Speaker, initially you were somewhat reluctant to take this post and this position. I've known you for so long as a policy guy. You're one of the probably most thorough, in-the-weeds policy people out there, whether it was the budget or health care. How has this transition been? This is a strategic post. This is the den leader for a fractious group of people from all over the country that don't always agree on everything, and now you're contending with a national presidential campaign. How has it been, and what's been the most difficult part?
It's definitely been different than other jobs I've had.
I've noticed.
But I do enjoy it in many ways because I was able to transition the way the job worked. I transformed it from being something different to something that I think suits my skill sets better. First of all, I have a young family, so I'm home every single weekend. I don't travel like other speakers have been traveling. Second of all, I made it more of a policy job. Our agenda that we rolled out is something that I was instrumentally involved in with all of our members in our caucuses to get us from being an opposition party to being a proposition party. Take our principles, apply them to the problems of the day, offer people solutions. And so I was able to transition the speakership into more of a policy advocacy job, a policy formulation job, which is what I like to do.
Yeah.
And that, because I've been able to redesign the job that way, has made this more successful for my skill set and something that I enjoy more. And so you have to change these things to work for your skill set. And I've been able to do that, so that's why I feel good at where I am.
I noticed there's no smoky odor here in the speaker's lounge, which is nice.
Yeah, no smoky odor. It took a long time to get rid of that smell.
Fumigate the room. Yeah. Speaker Ryan, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, Ray. Good being with you.
Pleasure, as always. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.